Our first speaker this afternoon is very well known to you here and around Australia, and internationally I suspect as well. John Adams is an independent economist. An independent economist and a former economics advisor to the Liberal Party, a Liberal Party senator. Before the Citizens Party met John in 2018, we had spent 6 months distributing a flyer devoted to his forecast of economic Armageddon. You might remember that. John has a YouTube program with banking expert Martin North called In the Interest of the People, and his own channel called The Public Crusader. He's been extraordinarily effective in using social media to mobilise public opinion on crucial issues, such as the 2019 cash ban bill, the 2020 bail-in repeal bill, and the 2022 Senate inquiry into the Australian Securities and Investment Corporation. The Citizens Party has had the pleasure of collaborating closely with John Adams on these campaigns. Please welcome John to speak on the outcome of the Senate's ASIC inquiry, which the Citizens Party has adopted as policy: abolish and replace ASIC. John.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Craig, for that introduction, and thank you everyone for coming today. I've only got a limited amount of time, but there's a lot to get through because ASIC is one of those key issues that we have to get on top of, because the citizens, at the core of the Citizens Party, as we heard in panel 2, is all about banking reform, and ASIC is the financial police force. ASIC is there to keep the banks and the broader corporate sector and the financial system honest so that we, the people, don't get screwed over. And this whole process that we've gone through over the last few years with the ASIC inquiry has been a massive eye-opener to me as to what's really going on in this country. So, but before we get started, I just wanted to say that now I'm not a member of the Citizens Party. I mean, I was a member of the Liberal Party previously. I quit the Liberal Party in 2016, but I'm independent now. But you, of the members of the Citizens Party, you should be proud of your leadership, particularly Robbie Barwick, because you guys have been instrumental to helping me drive these key issues in Parliament. And without you guys, I mean, I've had some success, but it's been very much in conjunction with Craig and Robbie and Lisa and everyone else. And you guys should be very proud of your leadership. Now, the thing is that, so when I first started interacting with the Citizens Party in 2018, it was all about macroeconomics, the debt bubble, my views about the banking system, etc. At that point in time, the Citizens Party was talking a lot about APRA and the Reserve Bank of Australia. And then all of a sudden in 2021, Citizens Party took up the fight about ASIC in relation to a case called Sterling, which is where a bunch of people got screwed over in Western Australia. And that press release on your, it'd be on your bottom left-hand side, that's a press release put out by the Citizens Party about what happened with that Sterling situation there. And then obviously, now, yes, I was the catalyst to get the ASIC inquiry up, but the day that we got the vote up in the Senate, Robbie mobilised the whole team in Coburg to melt down the phones, particularly with the Greens, and that's how we got 43 votes in the Senate against the government's wishes to get the inquiry up. So, and that's obviously the top one there. And obviously recently, Robbie's put out a press release on behalf of the Citizens Party talking about sacking the chairman of ASIC, Joseph Longo, and it is long overdue that Mr. Longo goes because he's just absolutely hopeless. Now, as Craig said, the policy of the Citizens Party is to implement the Bragg inquiry recommendation. So recommendation 2 talks about abolishing ASIC and replacing it with 2 regulators, a companies regulator and a separate financial conduct authority. Now, Joseph Longo has gone on in the media in the last few days and said that this is a rogue senator, Senator Bragg, and this is just a crazy idea to break up ASIC. And yet, this structure and this recommendation actually comes from Professor Shmulo, who was here in panel 2, and this is actually commonplace. So whether it's in the United Kingdom or Singapore or Hong Kong, most jurisdictions around the world have 2 regulators, and Australia's quite unique, where we've taken a companies regulator and a Financial Conduct Authority, put them into one, hoping it would work, and it's been a catastrophic failure for more than 2 to 3 decades. And so this recommendation by Bragg is not radical. It's actually international best practice. And Professor Schmiller has written numerous papers on this issue, and we have the wrong structure, and that's why the policy that the Citizens Party is going to take to the next election is actually, it's not crazy. It's actually good policy. And while the Bragg inquiry report is a report of a Liberal senator, the Citizens Party is the first political party in this federal political season to go to the election saying we're going to abolish ASIC. So you know, you beat Labor, you beat the Greens, you beat the Liberal Party, you beat One Nation. You are the first people to say, if you get elected, you're going to abolish ASIC, and you should be applauded for being the first in the nation to do it. Now, here's the thing. So I'm going to give you 5 good reasons why we need to abolish ASIC. Reason number 1 is their ability or failure to investigate. It's super hard to get ASIC to do an official investigation. Reason number 2 is distorted investigations. They investigate the wrong stuff. Look, it's not a joke. They investigate the wrong stuff, and I'm going to show you some examples of that. Reason number 3 is the quality of their investigation has collapsed under the current leadership. Number 4, sick culture. Now, the word sick is not me. Senator Bragg has said on multiple occasions in the Australian Senate, they have a sick culture, and we're going to get into that as well. And the 5th reason, and obviously this is being recorded, I had a text message from a journalist from the Australian newspaper who wants to see this presentation. I'm going to say it. They are corrupt. They are, and we're not just talking about like limited corruption. We are talking about full-on corruption at ASIC. So we have seen over the last 2 years this leadership team at ASIC being thoroughly dishonest with the Parliament, with the press. There are multiple cases where they openly lie in federal court about potential litigants, and they are clear cases of corruption at ASIC. And they want to call me crazy or conspiracy theorist, but it's actually real. And these are 5 good reasons why the case for abolishing ASIC and the current leadership team is all legitimate. So let's go through these one by one. So failure to investigate. Now, I'm just going to quickly go over to the screen so I can read this carefully. Now, of all the submissions that came forward to the ASIC inquiry, the one that made me quite emotional was submission number 37. So this is, there's a case called Courtney House, which was a full-on Ponzi scheme operated out of Sydney. And basically, the person who submitted this was a victim impact statement, and her testimony was about Courtney House, this capital trading group. It was a Ponzi scheme allowed to run under an ASIC license, financial license, for 7 years, involved hundreds of investors, and if the liquidator's figures are correct, $220 million. I mean, that was basically lost, making it the largest Ponzi scheme in Australian history. Now, and here's the shocking part. So this is, again, from the witness statement. We learned that Courtney House had been officially reported to ASIC multiple times from multiple sources over the years as not only a potentially fraudulent activity, but in particular a Ponzi scheme. What makes this worse is that these official complaints predate by years the date that we and many other families invested, and their failure to act in any way to any one of these complaints has allowed this Ponzi scheme to go unchecked and unpunished for years. So when it comes to Sterling, the Citizens Party has been very public to demonstrate what happens when people lose their life savings, and those people in Western Australia and Queensland have basically, you know, a number of them have basically become destitute and homeless. And so we have an example here, this Courtney House one, a full-on Ponzi scheme, obviously not to the scale of Bernie Madoff, but ASIC knew for years this was going on and they did nothing. And it's like, well, why are we paying taxes if there's fraud in the market and ASIC is aware the fraud is happening and they do nothing, and by them doing nothing, more investors come into the product and they actually invest, and then they ultimately then lose their life savings. That is a failure to investigate. And that is not what we want from in terms of a regulator. Now, so To your left is the report I wrote in October 2022 that triggered the ASIC inquiry. And a couple of key things that came from the report. And again, this wasn't revolutionary. I was the first person in the country to take ASIC's annual report numbers, put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and start putting some graphs together. And what did I find? No further action in the financial year 2011 to 2012. 33%. So basically the three sources: liquidated reports, breach reports, and reports from the public. 33% was no further action. By financial year 21-22, double, 66%. So 2 out of 3 reports of alleged misconduct were basically thrown in the bin by ASIC over a decade. And then we have the number of investigations. It peaked in financial year 14-15 at 229 new investigations for that financial year, and it went all the way down to 107. Now, we had a 2-year inquiry, and you know, I had a meeting with ASIC in September of 2022 before I published this report, and I asked Warren Day, who's now departed ASIC, who was the CEO, I said, why is your organisation behaving like this? These are your numbers, these are not my numbers. They couldn't explain it. And for 2 years during the ASIC inquiry, they could not explain why there was systemic failure in their ability to respond to reports of alleged misconduct. But these are not the numbers of a healthy regulator. They, you know, I mean, what this demonstrates is that, you know, that the performance of this organisation has declined. And obviously, you know, if you're a member of the public and you want to go to ASIC and say, hey, I think there's something wrong with a company or a bank, or I've been scammed, etc., your chances of actually getting them to look at it, let alone justice, is so limited. Now, obviously, now, at the top there, you're going to see 2 articles, one by the ABC, one by news.com, that reported, these are the reports from October 2022 when I published my public report. Now, so the headline about they investigate less than 1% of complaints. So basically what I did was I looked at the number of investigations, which was on this previous slide, so the 229 down to 107, against how many total complaints they received throughout the financial year. So it peaked at, they were investigating 1.9% of the complaints in 14-15, and then by financial year 2021, it fell to 0.74%. So the whole premise that they investigate less than 1% basically comes in terms of this basic calculation. And so if you look at, if you look at the average, basically over the 11-year period, they received over 146,924 complaints. There was a total investigations over that 11-year period of 1,816 investigations. So the average rate over 11 years is only 1.24%. So if you go to ASIC with a report of alleged misconduct, over this 11-year stretch, your chances of getting an official investigation was about 1%. That's the average, 1.24%. And obviously by the stage of the pandemic, it had fell to less than 1%. And it's like, well, you know, how do you get justice when the cops are basically going to say, well, in 99 out of 100 cases, go away? It's almost impossible to get them to look at crime. It's like, well, what do you guys do? Now, here's the thing. So we have these statistics here, but something came in throughout the inquiry which really boggled the mind, because you think to yourself, okay, so you've got these numbers about new investigations, but what I didn't realise until the inquiry is the source of these investigations. Now, this table 9, comes from ASIC's own submission, and basically they say is there's 3 sources of how they started an investigation. It's either it comes from a report of alleged misconduct, the enforcement team starts their own investigation, or it comes from the surveillance team. So of these 1,816 official investigations over this 11-year stretch, only 518 investigations were directly from a report of alleged misconduct. So the majority of investigations, basically ASIC comes up with their own idea as to what to investigate, and there's only 28% that are a direct response to the public going in them. So when you look at that, so if any member of this audience went to ASIC and they're on Collins Street, or you went to ASIC tomorrow and said, I want you to commence an official ASIC investigation, the chances of you, a member of the public, going into Collins Street and saying, I want an investigation, is actually 0.35%. It is a fraction of a fraction chance that you can get an investigation. And it's like, well, how can you have confidence as investors, as consumers in the banking system, the financial system, if the chances of ASIC getting off its ass to do something is less than, is only 0.35%. So it is super serious. Now, one of the big scandals that came out in the inquiry is ARETA, which is the industry body for liquidators, provided testimony to a number of committees and basically said that a liquidator spent $5,000 doing a report alleging misconduct about a company, and these were breaches of law, and the report was rejected in 38 seconds. So how did that happen? So ASIC has artificial intelligence in which they will scan a report of alleged misconduct, and if they don't have the right words, they just reject it. And so this liquidator basically, so this was obviously a big scandal because no AI can actually assess whether the law's been broken. So but it says gone in 38 seconds, regulator using AI to reject serious criminal complaints. It's like, well, again, so the reason why the chances of, the reason why your inability to get an investigation is so high is because most of ASIC don't actually read your complaints. They get a computer to read them, and most of the time they just reject them, and they reject them very, very quickly. Now, here's the thing. So some of you will probably know that I actually went to ASIC and made a complaint. Now, I have a few props here. So this was my first complaint. So this was 10 months of investigation, about $50,000 investment into a fraud scheme, which actually a supporter of the Citizens Party had come to me in 2021 to talk about a company called ABC Bullion, which is the largest deal in the country. And again, the chances of me, no one, like I'm just a member of the public, going to ASIC and say, I want an official investigation. The chances of me doing this was 0.35%. And I was successful in actually getting an investigation. And they spent $300,000 and 13 months to start an investigation into ABC Bullion. And we're going to get into what we found in that process. So, but then they only investigated some of the allegations. They didn't investigate all of them. So I went back to my legal team and said, what do you reckon? They go, ASIC got it wrong. So then what I had to do was I had to write a 96-page legal analysis. Actually, it's the other one. So, no, so what I had to do was I had to write a 96-page legal analysis, hired my own lawyers again, and basically said, well, I think your legal assessment was wrong. And so I went to ASIC a second time last year. I said I want a second investigation, and guess what? I got a second investigation. But again, so the chances of getting one is 0.35%. The chances of getting 2 in 2 years, it's only 0.12%. And I got it, but this is the issue, and this is one of the reasons why senators were interested in doing the inquiry. Because okay, so yes, I have some money, yes, I have some ability, but the mum and dad investor have no idea how to construct a case. And in 2021, I had no idea of how to do this, and I had to learn from scratch. And I was lucky I found former ASIC senior people to help me along the process. Because it's one thing to actually understand how to put a complaint together, but then you have to go collect the evidence. And then when you're trying to deal with the whistleblowers and they don't want to come forward and obviously trying to get documentary evidence and expert evidence, etc., constructing a watertight case, it's actually very hard. It's probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But I had to do it twice in 2 years. And again, the chances of me pulling it off was only 0.12%. But I was able to pull it off. But again, it shouldn't be this hard to get ASIC to do an investigation. But if anyone would like a challenge, this is it. I did it 2 in 2 years. If anyone wants to go be a corporate crime fighter, if you can get 2 investigations in 2 years, give it a shot. See how you go. Now, so that's about reason number one. About the failure to investigate. And obviously this was a big theme in the Bragg Inquiry report about why ASIC needs to be reformed, because the rate of investigation is very, very low. Now let's talk about distorted investigations. Now here's like ASIC, as Professor Schmuller said before lunch, ASIC is primarily responsible for the Corporations Act and the ASIC Act, but they also are responsible for a few other acts, like the Insurance Contract Act. Now, when you think of what is Parliament's intent behind the law, it's actually trying to get to the heart of rooting out corrupt, dishonest, or fraudulent people. That is the essence of what the Parliament wants ASIC to do, particularly around criminal referrals to the DPP. And so in that top-hand box, you've got a whole bunch of sections, whether it's Section 84 of the Corporations Act, and then you've got a whole bunch of sections from Chapter 7, which deal with financial products, which talk about misleading or deceptive conduct, dishonest, being false, or intentionally or reckless, or being intentionally dishonest. And then in the ASIC Act, again, you have these unconscionable conduct, misleading, deceptive conduct, false misleading representations, and then the insurance contract, the duty of the utmost good faith. So what we want from a crime-fighting organisation like ASIC is we want them to go after crooks, people who are intentionally trying to rip people off, or people who are intentionally being dishonest in the course of commerce. Whether it's a bank or a company, whatever, that's what we want for. But what has ASIC been focusing on? This week, you have ASIC, Joseph Longo, being named by Time magazine in the top 100 for around climate change. So here's the thing. So one of the things that ASIC has been focusing on is something called greenwashing. It's where companies exaggerate their green credentials. And so ASIC has been now commencing civil litigation against companies that exaggerate their green credentials. And Joseph Longo has been named in the top 100 by Time magazine. So in this category of these top 100, they had the 4 categories: Titans, Catalysts, Innovators, and Defenders. So Longo is now in the top 100, and he's listed in terms of being a defender. Now, in terms of that quote, if I can read it here. This is the top quote there is from the Bragg report. ASIC refers most serious cases for prosecution to the Commonwealth Department of Commonwealth Department of Prosecutions. However, ASIC's referral to the DPP are in decline too. In 2022-2023, ASIC made 41 referrals to the CDPP, down from 86 referrals in 2018-2019. Now, 2018 to 2019, James Shipton, the former chairman, had a policy, why not litigate? And the Citizens Party has been very vocal to say that the why not litigate approach was the right approach, because this was heavily criticised during the Banking Royal Commission. So when James Shipton was in power and running ASIC, in response to Justice Hayne, they went to the Commonwealth Department of Public Prosecutions 86 times in a financial year. So we found 86 criminal cases. And then under Joseph Longo, the number of criminal referrals has collapsed. Now, this only a few months ago has been raised by the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Corporation and Financial Services. And so, people like Alex Hawke, who's the deputy chair of that committee, has said, why are you referring less people to the DPP? Are you trying to say there's less crooks today than there was 5 years ago? And ASIC doesn't have any explanation for it. But this is what you want. You want ASIC to go after criminal cases where there are dishonest people and fraud and things of that nature. And there's plenty of provisions in the law covering this sort of conduct. And that's what not ASIC's focus on. They focus on bullshit like climate change. And it's like, well, hang on, while representations about green credentials may be something that the capital markets are concerned about, it's not the top priority. If ASIC is there to protect consumers, the most serious form of harm is fraud. And that's what we want from ASIC, going after crooks. And they're not doing it. And this is why, and so it's super hard to get an investigation, but when they do investigate, they're investigating the wrong thing. And obviously, this is why Senator Bragg said that Australia is awash with white-collar crime. Now, poor investigation quality. Now, here is something interesting. So in 2022, when I made this criticism that they're investigating less than 1% and that the number of investigations had declined, well, ASIC made a conscious decision to say, okay, well, we need to get the number of investigations up. And so over the last 2 years, they have actually increased the number of investigations. So 3 years ago it was 107, they went to 134, last financial year was 186. So in the last 2 financial years, the number of ASIC investigations are up 57%. So you think to yourself, well, maybe they've learnt the lesson. Maybe that's a good thing. Over the last 2 financial years, their ability to respond to reports of alleged misconduct is like 1.14%, 1.1%, which is still lower than the 11-year average that I showed before, which was 1.24%. So they're still underperforming compared to the long-term average, but the investigations are up. So maybe you think, well, and I should say, it's Joseph Longo before Parliament has said this on numerous times, we are doing more investigations. But this is the trick. Well, how are they doing more investigations? They're doing it because they imposed an artificial rule within ASIC. So the Deputy Chair of Sarah Court basically has told their staff, we want investigations to be limited to 12 months. So we want to shorten the number of investigations, or the length of the investigations, so we can do more. But what's the consequence of that is? The quality of the investigations has gone way down. And we have numbers for this. Now these numbers I haven't showed publicly, but again, these are ASIC's numbers. So now, ASIC has a number of investigative tools. So you have something called Section 30 notices. This is where they issue a legal notice to a company and saying, produce books and records of a particular issue. So basically, you had a high number of notices being issued under Chairman Metcalfe, again, relatively high under Chairman Shipton, and basically the number of notices collapsed under Joseph Longo. So less notices means they're getting less information from companies. Less information means that the quality of their investigations have gone down. Then you got Section 33. Section 33 notices is where they issue a notice to an individual saying, you have documents in your personal possession, we want these documents. And again, the high point was under Chairman Shipton, and basically, you've gone from almost 2,000 notices per year down to about 1,200. And so again, they are getting less information from these potential targets. And again, when you think about civil cases versus criminal cases are beyond reasonable doubt. So, if you're going to try to put someone in jail, it's actually a very difficult process to do. And what you want to be able to get is as much information as possible so that your case before the court is watertight. But if they're asking for less information, it means that they're going after less crooks, and the crooks they're going after, the quality of their job has actually collapsed under the current chairman. Then you have search warrants. And again, yes, there was a bit of a fall during COVID-19, but you had a high number of search warrants near the tail end of when James Shipton was the chair. But in the last 2 financial years, they've executed a lot less search warrants than before. It's like, well, again, how can you be collecting evidence? So why do you conduct a search warrant? You're trying to catch crooks by surprise and preserve evidence. And they're doing less of them. So if they're doing less search warrants, what happens? They give the crooks the opportunity to delete evidence, tear up documents, alter the evidence legally or illegally. And obviously, if you can't preserve the evidence, your ability to bring cases to court actually falls. And so again, this is highly concerning that they're doing more investigations, but they're doing less search warrants. It's like, well, what are you actually investigating? And then we have what they call Section 19 notices. These are the compulsory examinations. And then the compulsory examinations under the National Credit Consumer Protection Act is Section 253. And again, the number of interviews, the compulsory interviews that are going, is going down. So the quality of their investigations are going down because they're actually interviewing less people, they're doing less search warrants, and they're asking for less information. So what's the virtue of doing more investigations if you're asking for less staff? Well, here's the thing. So when I produced these graphs last year, I actually put it to the former chairman, James Shipton. And basically, James Shipton, this is a direct quote from an email he sent to me. He said, these are fascinating. These are very revealing statistics. And basically, he says that these statistics demonstrate these powers really demonstrate the depth and breadth of investigation intensity. The thoroughness of investigations. These powers are lead indicators of the intensity of ASIC's investigations. You are right to highlight that it is not just the number of investigations, it's also the intensity and thoroughness that counts. So you had a former chairman where the numbers were up because he told his team, our first instinct is to investigate and we're going to bring things to court. So do proper investigations, the number were up. Now you have Joseph Longo, who's trying to manipulate the statistics to appease Parliament and the media, and the quality of investigations has actually gone down. And again, this is not what we want from a regulator that is supposed to be robust against going after corporate crime. Now, I want to just highlight this one case about investigation quality, because there are many people across Australia that I've had the opportunity to speak to over the last few years where they have been thoroughly wronged by ASIC. This Shannon case is an absolute disgrace. There's a guy called Jeff Shannon who was a bankrupt. He worked for a company. ASIC brought a criminal case seeking to put this person in jail on the basis that he was managing or directing a company as a bankrupt, which is a criminal offence under the Corporations Act. Now, my barrister represented Mr. Shannon, and in a meeting in 2019, my barrister said to the investigator, Nathan Miller, there's nothing to this case, leave it alone. They did an investigation, referred it to the DPP, and then they brought on a criminal case. So they said, no, we want to put Mr. Shannon in jail. 3 weeks before the trial started, and this is really, really serious. Mr. Shannon received, not his lawyers, Mr. Shannon directly received a phone call from a senior executive at ASIC called Joseph Zubik. And in that phone call, Mr. Zubik begged him to plead guilty to the crime in which he said he was innocent. And it's like, well, who does that? Who, as a public servant, would call a defendant and beg them to plead guilty? Now, why would ASIC beg someone to plead guilty? Because they knew he was innocent. And so when it went to the court, Mr. Shannon was found not guilty by the magistrate in the Southport Magistrates Court. And basically, what was the outcome from the judgment? That the investigator, Nathan Miller, who worked under Zubik, did not do a proper investigation. They had a start witness, and they just did whatever the start witness told them to do, and it was a one-sided case. The fix was in, and they wanted Mr. Shannon not to challenge it. That's why they begged him to plead guilty. This is not normal practice. Throughout my investigations into ABC bullying, I have talked to former senior people at ASIC. So when I tell them that ASIC officials are calling defendants, begging them to plead guilty, when the judge says they're not guilty, this is unheard of in the history of ASIC. This is full-on corruption. This should never happen in this country, but this is what happened to Mr. Shannon. And for Mr. Shannon to stay out of jail, he had to spend $700,000 of his own money on legal fees. It's super expensive when you're going up against ASIC, and this is why ASIC goes after small targets, because they try to drain them out of money and they try to force them into submission. And one of the reasons why they don't go after the big banks is because the big banks have very large budgets. And actually, to get a conviction, or with a civil or criminal against the banks, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of money. And obviously, we know that ASIC's doing less work and they've got a limited budget. So that's why they try to go for these easy targets. And yet Mr. Shannon fought it, told this person, Mr. Zubik, I'm not going to plead guilty, and actually won his case. And now he's going to sue ASIC for malicious prosecution. But again, this is highly disturbing behaviour in a supposedly mature economy, that you've got rogue investigators calling people up and saying, plead guilty, even though they know that they're innocent. Now, sick culture. Now, if anyone's watched Robbie and I in the last couple of months, we've talked about this. This is the staff survey from last year. These results have to be the worst in the last 123 years of the federal government. So you have, this is not me, John Adams, the conspiracy theorist. This is 1,056 ASIC staff responding to their views of ASIC's culture. Royal clarity, 26%, do you know job. 75% of ASIC don't know what they're supposed to be doing. Can you believe that? So motivation, how motivated are you to work at ASIC? 78% says, I'm not motivated to work there. Are you satisfied? Basically, you've got 82% of people saying, I'm not satisfied working at ASIC. Intention to stay, only 31%. And then you get this thing here, organisation level quality, 2%. 2%. This is the worst result in 123 years. I kid you not. Find me another public agency that 1,000 public servants says, I'm going to rank my workplace at 2%. This team of Joseph Longo and Sarah Court has been an absolute disaster, and these numbers have gone way down under this current leadership team, and yet they try to pretend that I don't understand ASIC or Senator Bragg is a rogue senator, or the Citizens Party is crazy. But no, this is ASIC's own staff saying something is fundamentally wrong under this leadership team. These numbers are just absolutely crazy. And this is, if you want one reason why the Citizens Party's policy for the next election is correct, it's because the people at ASIC is saying that this is a basket case. It's not Craig Isherwood or Robbie Barker saying it's a basket case. ASIC's own staff is saying this is nuts. I mean, look, I've got a 10-year-old daughter. I told my daughter, if you ever find yourself in a place where the rating is a 2%, you leave. When I told my daughter this, she goes, Dad, why do they go to work? I kid you not. A 10-year-old, it makes sense to them. If it's 2%, my daughter goes, why do they go to work? I said, well, they've got bills. They've got to pay their bills. They need a job. But you know, if a 10-year-old instinctively knows that you should not go to work when the workplace is at 2%, what the hell are we paying taxes for? I mean, Joseph Longo is on $824,000 a year, and he's running this absolute shit show, and you've got this absolutely terrible rating. Now, and here's a story from the ABC News on the 14th of August. You have someone within ASIC saying to the ABC, ASIC staff are crying at their desks. So Robbie and I talked about this on a recent show. This is not Robbie and I making this up. This is someone at ASIC telling the media, we're crying at work. And I told my daughter, they're crying at work. She goes, why would you cry at work? It's like, well, how do you explain it to a 10-year-old? People are going to work and they're crying at work for what reason? I mean, and obviously they say, we've all quietly quit. The only solution is to get rid of the current leaders. The place is like a cult. So it's just, this has to be one of the worst organisational cultures that has ever graced Australia's shores. Now, here's the thing. This particular slide was concealed from the ASIC inquiry, and it was only revealed in the last, I think, 2 or 3 months through a different committee, which was the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Corporations and Financial Services. So the real big scandal, so here's what happened. Senator Bragg received a confidential note from an ASIC employee about the staff survey. So he asked for the staff survey results. ASIC released 5 pages, including this particular page. But the actual full presentation was 233 pages, and ASIC concealed more than 228 pages of the full presentation. But the full thing was released around August of this year, after the inquiry had reported. And so this is the most important slide from the whole presentation. It says, and the red circle is, results show that the 2023 engagement score is down 26% from 2021. So what does that mean? The leadership team of Joseph Longo and Sarah Court have lost the confidence of their own staff. And so these numbers have fallen through the floor, and it demonstrates that this set of current leaders have absolutely failed in their job to enforce the law, to protect us, but also to get the confidence of their own staff. And so if there was any reason to sack Joseph Longo, which is a press release that the Citizens Party put out, this is the number. The culture under ASIC has absolutely collapsed. Now, we'll get into the dishonesty and corruption. So throughout the inquiry, ASIC attempted to withhold or conceal information from the Parliament. They played conspiracy games to manipulate Parliament, and obviously Bragg was quite alive to this. So now I did a number of FOIs, and what I was able to find was this particular email from the former national media manager at ASIC, Gervais Green, in which he talked about, so this was in response to my report in October 2022. He said, let's arrange a Dorothy Dixer. We need to respond to John Adams in Parliament, so let's actually fix the parliamentary proceeding, conspire with a politician, have someone ask a Dorothy Dixer, and then we can provide a response to refute my report, which was based on their numbers. So, but again, Parliament, you cannot have public servants attempting to interfere in democracy. You see the Democrats saying that Trump is a threat to democracy. No, ASIC is a threat to democracy, because within ASIC, they basically conspire within unofficial email that they're going to rig Parliament against us. That's what they do. So, and that's corruption. And here, on the day that the Senate voted for the inquiry, so this is the Thursday, the 27th of October, that morning, I'm on the phone with Robbie. Robbie and the team in the COBEG are calling all of the Citizen Party members, telling them to call every senator to vote for the inquiry. And on that morning, Joseph Longo basically said, in response to seeing the terms of reference, this is extraordinary. What can be done to narrow the breadth of the terms? Can PJC do this? So me and Craig and Robbie and Lisa and everyone, we're trying to get this inquiry up. And ASIC is conspiring within their organisation. How do we rig the vote and rig proceedings in the Senate so the inquiry doesn't happen? It's just like, again, why are they trying to manipulate Parliament? Why don't they just actually do their job? It's called corruption. And it's corruption under this current leadership team of Joseph Longo and Sarah Court. Now, back in August, I was in the office with Robbie. We did a show called The Final Battle in the Great War Against ASIC Corruption. So in this, I had enough. Robbie and I just let loose. We just basically said what we wanted to say about Longo in court. And I just said to them, if they want to sue us for defamation, happy to. Actually, there was a couple of people that we were at the motel last night, and we're talking about, can you make allegations of corruption? Well, Robbie and I made allegations of corruption against Joseph Longo and Sarah Court, and we were not afraid of it. But this is the shocking thing that happened. 2 weeks later, Robbie gets this. This is an official ASIC envelope, and it says Robbie John Adams, Australian Citizens Party, PO Box 379, Coburg, Victoria. So, and this is the second time that the Citizens Party got an official ASIC envelope. And so what was in this envelope? It was a handwritten note on ASIC official stationery by an ASIC employee who responded to the show. So someone at ASIC, so ASIC has 2,000 staff, someone at ASIC watched the show, we said you're all corrupt, they wrote to Robbie. And here's the envelope. And what did this person say? It says, confidential due to culture of fear at ASIC. Dear John Adams and Robbie, your videos about corruption are 100% spot on. So again, I'm not the crazy one. ASIC-owned staff are saying they are corrupt, not me. And they're basically saying, actually, ASIC is currently the worst it's ever been, worse than what you portray. And I've been in an enforcement team here for over 20 years. So a 20-year veteran is saying it's the worst it's ever been, and it's worse than what I said on the video with Robbie. I didn't hold back. But when you get veterans saying it is the worst it's ever been, this is unbelievable. And then they go on to say Joe Longo and enforcement executives are telling staff the Bragg inquiry is rubbish, not to listen, even though we are all miserable and are being bullied. Yes, it will never change from within, as the senior executives are untouchable and staff are demoralised and refusing to perform. So this is an ASIC whistleblower prepared to risk their job, to write to the Citizens Party, to say the corruption is real and it won't change until we abolish ASIC. And so again, I applaud Craig and the Citizens Party for taking this policy to the next election, because the public service in the organisation is saying change has to happen, and Longo and Court are so corrupt that they're being bullied and everyone's being demoralised, and you can tell that from being in terms of the staff survey results. Now, I'll just finish with this. Now, long story, but here's what happened. I triggered 2 investigations to ABC Bullion. On both occasions, ASIC said, we find no crime. And last year, they wrote to me and said, we can't find the evidence. Now, I didn't accept that. And I was lucky. So there's a guy in the audience called Les Morgan. He was able to reach out to me in September last year after receiving a very fishy phone call from ABC Bullion. And so between him, there's another guy called Jeremy Glass and myself, we spent 8 months retracing ASIC's investigation. This is the first time in Australian history that this happened. We used FOI and questions on notice via Parliament. We reconstructed ASIC's chronology of the investigation. And what did we find? We found the law was broken by ABC Bullion during the ASIC investigation, and this was an illegal cover-up. And we have confirmation from other regulators in the country to say that illegal activity occurred during ASIC's investigation. But what happened during the investigation? Someone popped up to save the day. The Prime Minister. The Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, during an ASIC criminal investigation, went out of the way at a national press conference to endorse crooks. That's what happened. That's not a joke. And if anyone's listening on tape, please sue me for defamation. I want to go to court. I want to get your records because this is all true. The Prime Minister, this is the first time in Australian history that a sitting Prime Minister endorses people under criminal investigation by his own government. That's what happened. ASIC says to me last year in a letter, we take no action because we can't find the evidence. Now, what I did was I produced a 200-page critical review and over 200 exhibits, and we demonstrate where the crime is. So basically, the allegation was missing gold and silver. And this came from a whistleblower. So what ended up happening? 3 weeks into an ASIC criminal investigation, whatever bullion they had, they moved it to this building in that picture, which was illegal. They had no occupation certificate. It was a breach of New South Wales law. And ASIC, you think yourself about these search warrants. How long did it take ASIC to go search for missing gold and silver? 9.5 months. They did not leave the office for 9.5 months. So they gave Albo's mates 9.5 months to alter the evidence, to cover up the crime, even though it was all illegal. And they basically said, nothing to see here. So when we exposed it all, and I went to ASIC in June of this year and I said, well, we caught you, here it all is. They wrote to me and said, we'll take no action. But last year they said there's no evidence. Now that I have the evidence, they won't tell me why they take no action. This is out and out corruption that is happening at ASIC. And again, the amount of, I was working for 8 months, 100 hours a week to try to nut this all together with Les and Jeremy. This is not easy to do. And most Australians cannot unpick. ASIC is so secretive, it is super hard to reconstruct an ASIC investigation and figure out whether they actually did a proper job or not. But that's what happened now. Michael West Media was the only media organisation prepared to publish this story. I haven't been sued by ABC Bullion, neither has Michael West Media, because all of these articles are true. So if you want to go and read these articles and learn about how there was a systematic cover-up by the Prime Minister and ASIC to cover up obvious crimes, please read it, because we caught them out. And again, while I have some grievances about this particular case, and we still have Senator Roberts in the Parliament asking further questions about ASIC on notice, this is symptomatic of a broader tapestry of many, many cases where ASIC is either covering up for people, they lie to courts, they engage in systematic corruption, and I don't want to pay taxes if this is what our government is. So that sort of summarises why I fully support the Citizens Party policy to abolish ASIC. And thank you, Craig, for taking it to the next election.
Thank you, John. I think between your tenacity and the fact that we've been on this case too, they haven't got a chance